Hi, and welcome back to Pal Saga. Today I want to tell you about the night I drove 3 hours through a rainstorm to help my son pack boxes, and what I found when I got there. This story changed everything I thought I knew about the family I had welcomed into my life for 11 years. The pounding was coming from inside the storm cellar. My granddaughter's voice, small and hoarse, like she had been screaming for a long time. I was standing in my son's backyard, holding a flashlight and a box of kitchen dishes I had carried from the truck, when I heard it. The storm cellar was set into the ground near the fence line, a concrete slab door with a rusted iron handle. We used to joke about it when my son and Sandra first bought the property, that old relic from whoever built the farmhouse in the 50s, good for nothing, but storing Sandra's canning jars and the occasional garden tool. I dropped the dishes. I didn't even hear them break. Emma. The name came out of my throat before I had finished crossing the yard. Emma, is that you? Grandpa. Grandpa, I'm down here. Please. The door was latched from the outside. Simple steel bolt, the kind you could slide open with one hand. I had it open in under 2 seconds. The smell hit me first, damp earth and mildew, and then the cold. She was sitting on the bottom step, hugging her knees to her chest, 6 years old in a yellow nightgown, face streaked with dirt and tears. I went down those steps faster than a 64-year-old man should move, and I had her in my arms before my knees remembered how much they ached. How long have you been down here, Emma? How long? She couldn't answer right away. Her whole body was shaking, not violent like hypothermia, more like the shaking that comes after terror has lived inside you for too long. I carried her up the steps and into the yard, and I sat down on the wet grass and held her against my chest and let her shake. Grandma put me here, she finally said. I spilled the cereal. I didn't mean to, Grandpa. Sandra's mother, Renata. I had driven from Columbus to this farmhouse outside of Dayton because my son Kevin had asked me to come. The divorce had been finalized 6 weeks ago. Sandra kept the house, kept primary custody of Emma, and Kevin got every other weekend and a 1-bedroom apartment above a hardware store. He had been begging Sandra to let him collect some boxes from the property, personal items she had boxed up and left in the barn, and she had finally agreed, grudgingly, on the condition that he do it while she was at her sister's in Cincinnati. Drop off Emma at Mom's beforehand. She had texted him. I don't want her around for the arguing. But Kevin had called me that afternoon. His truck was in the shop. Could I come down and help load? He would meet me there, he said. He was just finishing up at work and would be maybe an hour behind me. I had arrived to find the front door unlocked, the kitchen lights on, Sandra's car in the driveway. Her plans had apparently changed, but she wasn't in the kitchen or the living room or anywhere on the ground floor. Her mother's car, that old tan Buick with the cracked side mirror, was parked on the gravel behind the barn. Renata had been watching Emma today. I thought nothing of it. I started bringing boxes from the truck, and then I heard my granddaughter's voice, coming from inside the ground. Emma, where is Grandma Renata? Inside, watching the television. She said I had to stay down here until I learned to be careful. She locked you in a storm cellar for spilling cereal. She does it when I'm bad. Emma said it the way a child says something that has been true for so long it no longer sounds strange. She does it when I'm bad, like it was a rule of the house, like bedtime at 8 or no candy before dinner. I stood up with my granddaughter in my arms, and I turned toward the house, and then Emma grabbed my collar. Grandpa. Wait. I stopped. She was looking across the yard, past the cellar door, to the far corner of the fence line where the barn wall cast a long shadow. There was another cellar door there, or something like it, smaller, set flush against the foundation of the old barn. I had walked past it twice already without registering it. It was painted the same weathered gray as the barn boards, nearly invisible. A padlock hung from a bracket bolted through the wood. New padlock, shiny steel, wrong against all that old rot. Don't go over there, Grandpa. Why not? Emma pressed her face into my shoulder. Her voice dropped until I could barely hear it. Grandma says that's where the ones who don't behave go forever. I stood very still. The ones who don't behave go there forever. Emma, has Grandma ever put you in that one? No. She said that one's not for little mistakes. Her voice was barely a breath. She said it's for when someone is really bad, so bad they can't come back. I carried Emma to my truck. I put the heat on full and I wrapped my jacket around her shoulders. "Lock the doors, sweetheart. Don't open them for anyone except me or a police officer." She nodded. I could see her teeth were still chattering. I called 911 as I walked back across the yard toward that far corner. The dispatcher told me to wait, told me not to touch anything. She said units were 8 minutes out. I told her I understood. I went to my truck and found the crowbar I keep behind the seat. I want to be clear about something. I am not a man who breaks rules. I spent 31 years as a fleet mechanic for the county, showed up on time, filed my paperwork, never once took a shortcut that would have put someone at risk. I believe in letting the people with the badges and the training handle things. I believe that. But I was standing 6 feet from a padlocked door in the dark, and my granddaughter had just told me it was where people went when they couldn't come back, and I had already found her in the ground once that night. I used the crowbar. The wood around the bracket was old and soft. The whole mount came out in 2 strikes. I lifted the door. Stone steps going down, 6 of them, into a space maybe 10 feet square, bare concrete floor. A single wooden shelf along one wall holding mason jars. And against the opposite wall, a large chest freezer. Old, white, the paint yellowed to the color of old teeth. Unplugged, padlocked as well, the cord coiled neatly on top. I stood at the bottom of those steps for a long moment. The smell was wrong. Not decay, not rot, something chemical, and underneath that something else I did not have a name for. Something that made the hairs on my forearms stand up. I used the crowbar on the freezer lock the same way I had used it on the door. Inside, beneath a layer of what I can only describe as packing material, chemical-soaked cloth wrapped around and between and over everything, was a body. A young man, or what had been a young man, maybe 17 or 18 years old at the time of death, preserved in a way that told me someone had known something about how to slow decomposition. Not frozen. The freezer had been unplugged for a long time, but preserved, maintained, deliberately kept from the full recklessness of decay. His face was turned slightly to the side, dark hair. The jaw was set. He had been there for a very long time. I climbed back up those steps and I sat down on the wet grass outside and I called Kevin. The police arrived in 11 minutes. I was still sitting in the grass when the first cruiser pulled in. I pointed them toward the barn, and then I walked to my truck and sat with Emma and held her hand while the red and blue lights turned everything strange colors. Kevin arrived 20 minutes later, pale and wild-eyed, and when he got out of his car I told him everything before he could take 3 steps. He sat down on the bumper of my truck and put his head in his hands. Detective Lynette Burrows was the one who took my statement. 50s, steady voice, the particular kind of calm that people develop after years of being the person who arrives after something terrible has already happened. She asked me the same questions twice without apologizing for it, and I respected that. She told me the situation was being treated as a crime scene, and that I would need to come to the station in the morning. "And Sandra?" I asked. "Does anyone know where she is?" "We've made contact," Detective Burrows said. "She's on her way back from Cincinnati." "And Renata?" She paused for just a moment. "Mrs. Renata Cole is currently being detained for questioning. Emma's core temperature was normal when we got to the urgent care clinic, thank God, but the doctor wanted to monitor her for a few hours anyway, and I was grateful for that because it kept her warm and kept me focused on something other than the image of what I had found in that barn." Kevin sat on the other side of her bed and the two of us talked very little. There was not much to say that could be said in front of a 6-year-old. Sandra arrived at the clinic at 11:30. She came in the way a person comes in who has been crying in the car and then tried to compose themselves in the parking lot. Her mascara was clean, but her eyes were still red at the rims. She went straight to Emma. Emma reached for her. I watched my former daughter-in-law hold her daughter and cry into her hair, and I tried to find the anger I knew was somewhere inside me. I found it. But I also found something else underneath it that I was not expecting, which was confusion, and then something even further down that would take me a long time to understand. Kevin was the one who asked her. His voice was level and quiet, and I was proud of him for that. "Sandra, did you know about the storm cellar?" She didn't look up from Emma right away. When she did, her face was unreadable. "Mom said it was something she started when I was small, to teach me to be still, to think about what I had done." "She put you in the storm cellar when you were a child?" "The regular one," Sandra said. "Not the other one. The other one she never opened when I was around. She told me it was where she kept equipment for the garden. Old chemicals, things that were dangerous for children to touch. She made me promise never to go near it." "Sandra." She looked at Kevin. "She told me it was an heirloom in there. Something from her mother's family that she couldn't get rid of but didn't want anyone to see. I thought she was just being strange. She's always been strange." "There's a body in there," Kevin said. "A young man. They think he's been in there for more than 25 years. Sandra went very still. "Kevin," I said quietly. She had to know, Dad. Her face did something I had not seen a face do before. It didn't crumple. It didn't go blank. It sort of divided, one part trying to hold together what it had always believed, and another part receiving something it had known for a very long time without admitting. "There was a boy," she said finally. "Danny Marsh. He lived 2 streets over from us when I was in high school. He was my age, 16. He used to come around. He and my mother argued once, badly, about something I never understood. After that, my mother told me he had moved away suddenly, gone to live with his father in another state. I always thought it was strange because he hadn't said goodbye." She stopped. "When was that?" I asked. Sandra looked at me. Her eyes were dry now. "That was 1997. The body in the freezer was identified as Daniel Allen Marsh, 16 years old, reported missing by his mother in September of 1997 after he failed to come home from school one afternoon. His mother had told police he had been arguing with a neighbor woman, an adult whom she declined to name in her initial statement because her son had told her it would make things worse if she did. That statement was in a file that had been sitting in a county records archive for 27 years. The cause of death was ruled asphyxiation. The medical examiner found evidence of blunt force trauma as well and was unable to determine with certainty which had come first. What she was able to say with certainty was that the preservation of the body had been deliberate and careful, consistent with someone who had access to embalming chemicals and had used them methodically over a period of years to maintain the remains in their current condition. Renata Cole had worked for 11 years as an administrative assistant at a funeral home in Miamisburg, Ohio, from 1989 to 2000. She was 71 years old. She had silver hair that she wore pinned back, and she had always brought homemade oatmeal cookies to Kevin's birthday dinners, and she had held Emma as an infant in the delivery room and cried tears that I had believed, until that rainy October night, were the tears of a woman overwhelmed by the miracle of new life. She was charged with murder in the 2nd degree in the death of Daniel Marsh, attempted false imprisonment of a minor, child endangerment, and obstruction of justice. She did not confess. Her defense attorney argued diminished capacity. The prosecution argued premeditation with a degree of clinical deliberateness that the jury found difficult to look at directly. They deliberated for less than a day. Guilty on all counts. She was sentenced to life in prison. She was 71 years old. The judge said she would likely die behind bars and said it without apology. "I want to be honest with you about something. I spent a long time after the sentencing trying to understand what kind of person could do what Renata Cole had done and then spend 27 years going to church on Sundays and baking cookies and watching her granddaughter grow, and holding all of it inside her as though it were nothing, as though it had happened to someone else entirely. I read the psychiatric evaluation that was entered into evidence. The evaluating psychiatrist described Renata as presenting with what she called a profound compartmentalization disorder compounded by narcissistic rigidity, meaning she had a complete and apparently genuine inability to view events in which she was the agent of harm as being, in her internal accounting, harmful at all. In her mind, Daniel Marsh had been a problem that needed to be managed. In her mind, Emma, in that storm cellar, was a form of instruction, not punishment. In her mind, children were things to be arranged. I have read that evaluation 3 times, and I understand it no better the 3rd time than I did the first. Sandra lost custody. Not because the investigation found evidence that she knew about Daniel Marsh, because it did not, but because the family court judge found that she had repeatedly left Emma in Renata's sole care after Emma had shown signs of anxiety and distress that a reasonably attentive parent should have investigated. Emma had been refusing to go to Grandma Renata's house for more than a year. She had started wetting the bed. She had nightmares that she couldn't explain and that Sandra had attributed to too much television. The judge said, in her ruling, that willful inattention in the face of a child's distress is not a neutral act. Kevin was awarded full custody. Sandra received supervised visitation. She cried when the ruling was read. I did not feel nothing this time. I felt sorry for her, and I also felt certain that the ruling was correct, and both of those things were true at the same time. Kevin and Emma moved into a house in Beaver Creek, 3 bedrooms, a big kitchen, a maple tree in the backyard that Emma decided on the first day was perfect for a tire swing. I drove down on a Saturday in November with my toolbox and 2 coils of good rope, and we spent the afternoon hanging that swing and eating chili that Kevin made on the stove and listening to Emma explain, in great detail, the plot of every book she was currently reading, which at that point was 4 books simultaneously, because that is the kind of child she is. Emma started seeing a therapist named Dr. Patricia Hollis 2 weeks after the incident. Dr. Hollis specializes in childhood trauma, and she has an office with a yellow couch and a large basket of colored pencils, and Emma took to her immediately. They met twice a week for the first 6 months, then once a week, and now once every 2 weeks. Dr. Hollis told Kevin early on that Emma was showing strong indicators of resilience, which Dr. Hollis defined for us as not the absence of pain, but the ability to process pain without becoming defined by it. Emma still has days when enclosed spaces make her breath go short. She still sometimes reaches for someone's hand going downstairs. She slept with the light on for the better part of a year. But she also started 2nd grade in September and made the Reading Challenge honor board and has a best friend named Priya, who thinks Emma is the funniest person she has ever met, which, knowing my granddaughter, I believe completely. I am 64 years old. I retired from the county 3 years ago. My wife Margaret passed in 2019, and since then it has mostly been me and my dog Hector and whatever project I have going in the garage. I am not a man who thinks much about legacy or meaning, or the shape that a life makes when you step back and look at it from a distance. I fix things. That has always been enough. But I think about that night in the yard more than I expected to. I think about what I almost did not do. I had almost let Kevin handle the box pickup himself and stayed home. My back had been bothering me that week, and Margaret always used to say that my back only bothered me when I was looking for reasons not to drive somewhere. She was not wrong. I had almost waited until the weekend when Kevin's truck would be back from the shop. I had almost called it a young man's job and gone to bed. I am not a man who believes in the particular shape that the word fate gets used to mean. But I believe in the specific gravity of small decisions. I believe that the difference between the night I showed up and the night I did not show up is the difference between Emma sitting in that tire swing right now, arguing with Kevin about whether she can have a dog, and something I cannot let myself think about for more than a moment without having to go stand in the yard. I showed up. That part I got right. The investigation into Danny Marsh's disappearance reopened fully after the arrest, and it uncovered things that had been sitting unseen for nearly 3 decades. His mother, who was still living, gave a new statement. She said Danny had told her, a few weeks before he disappeared, that the woman down the road had screamed at him in her driveway for talking to her daughter, had grabbed him by the arm, and had said things to him that he had not repeated in full because he was 16 and ashamed, and because he had told his mother not to worry, he could handle it. He thought it was just a crazy neighbor. He thought it would blow over. His mother had believed him. That decision had been the compass of her grief for 27 years. She is 80 years old now. She sat in that courtroom every single day of the trial. When the verdict was read, she put her hand over her mouth and did not make a sound. Afterward, Kevin and I were standing in the hallway outside the courtroom, and she came up to us and she took Kevin's hand first and then mine, and she said, "Thank you for finding him." She said it the way you say something that has been locked inside you for so long it comes out smoother than it should, polished by years of rehearsal in the dark. I told her I was sorry it had taken so long. She shook her head. "Better late," she said. "Better late than not at all." Danny's remains were released after the trial. His mother arranged a small service, 20 or so people, at the cemetery in the town where he had grown up. Kevin asked me a few weeks later if we should take Emma. I told him it was his call as her father. He thought about it for a day, and then he asked Emma what she thought. She said she wanted to go. She said that when she had been in the storm cellar, she had been so scared that she had talked out loud to make herself feel less alone, just to hear her own voice, and she had thought about whether anyone would notice she was gone. She said she thought Danny probably felt that way too, that wondering if anyone was looking for you was maybe the worst part. So we went on a Saturday morning in March, Kevin and Emma and me. The cemetery was at the edge of town where the housing developments gave way to old farmland, flat Ohio land stretching out to a gray horizon. Danny's headstone was simple, light granite. Just his name and his dates, and beneath that a single line his mother had chosen, "Gone too soon, found at last." Emma stood in front of that headstone for a while. She had brought a drawing she had done at home, colored pencils. A picture of a boy standing in a field with the sun overhead. She tucked it under the edge of the stone base. "Hi, Danny," she said. "I'm Emma. I'm the one who was in the cellar. I know we never met, but I wanted you to know that people were looking for you. Your mom never stopped. She waited your whole long time. And my grandpa found you?" She was quiet for a moment. I put my hand on her shoulder, and she leaned against my arm. "I'm sorry it took so long," she said. "But you're not in the dark anymore." She straightened up and looked at Kevin. "Can we stop for donuts on the way back?" Kevin said yes, whatever she wanted. We walked back to the car, the three of us, through the thin March sunlight. Emma held both our hands and skipped in the way that 7-year-olds skip when they are full of something that needs to move through the body and out into the world. If you are watching this, I want to say something to you directly. I am 64 years old, and I have not said anything publicly in my life because I am a private man and because I believed, for most of those 64 years, that family business was family business and that you did not interfere in what happened inside someone else's house. I was wrong. The things that are done to children inside houses do not stay inside houses. They move through time in ways we cannot predict, and they do not stop moving until someone with the courage to pay attention finally sees them and acts. Danny Marsh told his mother he could handle it, and he was wrong too. Not because he lacked anything, but because he was 16 and because the adults around him took him at his word when they should have looked closer. Your children will sometimes tell you they are fine when they are not fine. They will act out in ways that seem random, and they will have fears they cannot explain. And they will turn anxious around certain people in ways they cannot articulate, because children do not always have the language for what they know in their bodies. Pay attention to that. The body knows things the mouth doesn't say yet. When a child you love flinches at a name, when they go quiet before a visit, when they come home from grandma's house and cry in their room and can't tell you why, that is information. That is your child trying to tell you something they don't have words for yet. You have to be the one who provides the words. You have to be the one who asks the question again, even after they say it's nothing, even after they say they're fine. I almost stayed home that night. My back hurt. I thought it was a young man's job. Emma is in the backyard right now. I can see her through the window from where I am sitting. She is on the tire swing, spinning herself in a slow circle, head tipped back, watching the maple branches go overhead. Kevin is on the porch reading something on his phone, and every so often he looks up to check on her without her noticing, the way fathers do that. My granddaughter is 7 years old. She has grass stains on her sneakers and a book about dolphins on the kitchen table, and she still sleeps sometimes with the light on. She is whole, and she is here, and she is healing. 3 months ago, I found her in the ground. Life goes on. I know that sounds simple, and I know it is not. Not when you have stood at the bottom of stone steps and seen what should not exist in the world. Life goes on anyway, insisting on itself, pushing through. Emma insisting on donuts on the way back from the cemetery. Kevin insisting on the tire swing even though he had to call me twice to get the height of the branch right. Even Hector, my old dog, insisting every morning on his walk as though nothing has changed, as though the world is exactly as reliable as he has always believed it to be. I am not sure what I believe about most things, but I believe that showing up matters. I believe that a Thursday night drive through October rain mattered. I believe that the crowbar behind my truck seat mattered. I believe that every small act of attention, every moment of actually looking rather than deciding not to look, matters in ways we rarely get to see the full shape of. You might be the reason a child gets to go home. You might be the reason a family gets an answer. You might just be the reason a 7-year-old girl gets to lie in a tire swing watching maple branches go by on a Saturday morning in March. Be the person who notices. Be the person who asks the question again. Be the person who goes to the barn with the crowbar. I took my chance. I would take it every time. Thanks for being here with me today. If this story means something to you, please share it. Someone in your life might need to hear it. You could change everything just by making sure they do.